Okay, let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay. Hey, I am so excited for this video because I have with me today Dr. Rita Borret. She said it's okay to pronounce it the French way because it has French origins. And she is a Black doctor from Rio de Janeiro. And I'm so excited to have her with me because we're in America, and it's rare in America to meet Black doctors, but it's even rarer in Brazil. So for her to be a Black doctor and to have accomplished so much in her 32, is it 31 or 32 years?
32.
In her 32, it's amazing. Like we're talking with a legend. Someone who has broken barriers. We're talking with a pioneer today. Let me first of all, let me just introduce to you and tell you guys more about Rita Borret in Portuguese, Rita Borret, and why we're talking with her today in the midst of this pandemic. So, first of all, Dr. Rita Borret, not only is she a Black family doctor, but she's also a Black lesbian. And she has a master's degree in public health, and she's also a professor in medicine. She's a member of the Negrex Collective, which is an organization for Black students in medicine as well as doctors. And what they do is they center discussion of race in medicine. Within this group, she coordinates work on the health of Blacks in family medicine. She is also president of the Family and Community Medicine Association in Rio de Janeiro. That's big. Like, Rita, that is huge.
It's quite a lot, but it's all good.
To being a medical doctor, she's also working on a doctorate in public health at FioCruz. FioCruz is the preeminent institution of public health in Brazil. And the theme that she's focusing on is the intersection of health, woman, Black women, and lesbians. And so I have to thank her so much for being here today because Rita has recovered from the coronavirus. And I wanted to do this live with her. I wanted to do this live with her about 2 weeks ago, but she said, oh, maybe we can do it in a couple of days. I'm still sick from coronavirus. I was like, no, take your time and recover because we need you. We need you helping our people in Brazil to recover from coronavirus. So I want to thank you so much for being patient. And I'm so happy that you have 100% recovered. Have you recovered? Have you recovered, Rita?
Yes.
Okay, good.
100%. Okay. I'm all good.
So I guess first, before I start off asking just with our questions, I want to just talk about a couple of things just to get people to understand what it means to be a Black doctor in Brazil. Brazil is a country that is technically 50% Black. 50% of Brazil are people who identify as Black. In that, when I say 50%, Brazil has a population of 200 million people. So 50% of Brazil's population of 200 million people identify as Black on the census. However, I lived in Brazil for 5 years. And I think in my 5 years of living in Brazil, I only met 2 Black doctors the whole entire time. So it's not a common thing to encounter Black doctors in your everyday life in Brazil. And I actually met people in Brazil who were saying, Black people who were saying, I have never seen a Black doctor in my life. I've never been attended to. So that's just to give you some perspective on how rare it is to kind of meet or to talk with a Black doctor. So once again, congratulations, Rita. But given that it's so rare to see Black doctors today, Rita, you had to make the decision to become a Black doctor at least a decade ago. So, Rita, can you tell us about growing up in Rio de Janeiro, growing up in Brazil, and how you decided to become a doctor?
Good question, actually. First of all, I have to say thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. And thanks for being patient with my recovery. It was important for me to take a few days off to get myself back together and to be able to be here. So thanks for that as well. I will already apologize for my English. I may not be completely understandable. So if that happens, please let me know. So I'll try to rephrase and see if I can find another words to express what I'm trying to say. Uh, yes, we are in Brazil. We are 56% of the population, Black
56%,
people,
not 50.
and around
56.
18%. And around 18% of the doctors that graduate every year are Black people. So it's a percentage that's very, very small, but it's already better than it used to be. By the time that I graduated, it was 2012, we were even fewer. So we have some public policies that made it possible for more Black people to enter university, to enter medical school. So nowadays we have 18% of people that are graduating as medical in medicine, but it's still a lot fewer than the majority of the people that are Black in Brazil. So we're still trying to get a balance around that. But I hope that in the next, I don't know, 10 to 15 years, it may get better or easier for Black people to meet Black doctors in Brazil. And I think that Negrex, which is this collective that you're talking about, is very important on trying to make that happen, because we are a collective that are trying to talk about race and bring the issue of racism around the public health system, but also we are a group that try to embrace ourselves, because being in a medical school is quite hard for Black people, because we are not expected to be there, and we deal with a lot of racism in a daily basis. So having the Negrex and having this place where we can embrace ourselves, where we can listen to each other, and where we can heal each other, it's important for us to be able to finish school, to be able to get strength to put out there our faces and start talking about racism. So I think that Negrex is kind of extremely relevant for Black medicine in Brazil at the moment. And you asked me, when did I decide to be a doctor, and how was that? I'm an only child in a family of Black people. And I think by the time I was growing up, I only have one option, and the option was to be the best I could possibly be. I could never be weak. I could never fail. I could never do anything wrong. So I decided to go to medical school because when I was quite young, my father had a lot of problems, a lot of health problems. He had a heart attack when he was 38, and I was 80 years old. So
And
for me, it's I saw a lot of situations. Go ahead.
oh no, I'm sorry. And I won't
So
interrupt
the
you.
idea of going to the hospital, no, that's okay. So the idea of going to the hospital and to see my father stay in a hospital for 2 months, 3 months was quite hard for me. And that was the moment where I decided that I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to help people getting better. And so I took this decision. I was quite young and I had no idea what that means at that time, but I just went with it. And by the time I entered college, for me it was quite hard, because everything that I expected was not what I was encountering in medical school. Medical school is quite cruel, actually. And it was only by the time that I was in my fifth year. In Brazil, we go for 6 years in medical school. When I was in my fifth year, that I got in touch with family and community healthcare. So that was when I understood where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do in my life as a doctor. So it was very important for me. I was almost done with medical school when I realized what I could do and how I could be a doctor. So until that time, I was actually thinking about give up and do another thing because medical school was not actually being exactly what I thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
But before everything, I had to first enter the medical school to give the answer to my parents. Like if you said you're going to do that, you have to do that. That was something that I learned that I had to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to do that. And when I was there, then I started to realize that maybe I would not be able to do it. But then I actually was able to find myself in the medical school and in medical career. So it was important for me to get in touch with primary healthcare and family medicine.
And during this time, like, were you one of a lot of were there other Black people there for you to talk with, to share experiences? Like, how was the Black community in medical school?
It was absent. We were in my class. We were around 70 students.
And how many Black people were there?
That was it. Two.
Two.
Only me and another guy. Yes, two out of 70. To class and look at us and ask where were we from, because they would assume that we were not from Brazil, because the medical students that would go to university in a public university in Brazil would usually be people from foreign countries that would be going there. So they would actually ask us, "Oh, where are you guys from?" And we're like, "I'm from here. I'm from Rio. I'm from Campo Grande. I don't know what you're asking me about." But that was something that after a while we understood that people were asking because they were not used to having Black people in the class. That was something that caught our attention.
And so, actually, I think you already answered this question. You said that you encountered problems. Well, before I go any further, I want to say that the thing that touched me the most is actually, a lot of people don't know this, but my father actually had a heart attack when he was 37, and he actually passed away. So I understand, like, how that experience was very impactful for you. So thank you for sharing that experience. And how is your father today? Is he better? Is he healthy?
No, his health is quite far from where he's staying at, but he's okay. He has recovered, and he's now dealing with other health problems. But he's alive and he's okay.
Okay.
So it's good. By the time that I finish by the time I finish, it was funny that you asked that, because by the time that I finished medical school, he said to me, "Now it's okay. Now I can die in peace." And I was heartbroken because it was important for me to hear he saying that.
Okay, cool. Well, when I come back to Rio, I want to meet him. What? So, okay, you made it to medical school, and you got through medical school. What was it that helped you to even get into medical school? Like, did you have a family that put a lot of pressure on you, or that expected perfection? Because in America, usually when we see people who are in medical school, a lot of times we have this perception that their families just, they had a whip and they were making sure that their kids were perfect and got those scores and everything. Or maybe was it a teacher who was like, "You know what? I'm going to make sure you get into medical school." So during your your high school and even in medical school, what was it that kept you going? Or do you think that it was just something that came from your family?
I have to say my family.
Mhm.
They put a lot of pressure on me, but they also would give everything for me. They would they would do anything in the world for me.
I think we're having a slight technical issues, but we can keep going. Can you keep speaking, Rita? Rita, like you're breaking up just a little bit.
So I kind of grew this feeling that I had to advise that school. Before that, the only idea that would go through my mind is that I had to do it. I had to be perfect. I had to enter university, and I could not waste any time. So I had to do it by the first time that I tried, and it had to be perfect because I did not want to disappoint my parents as well because they were doing so much for me, and I thought that I had to return that expectation. So it was not easy, but I don't think that it was so hard as well. We had an agreement and we had an understanding that it was important for me. I can say that they were very important for me. They are still pushy, but I think it's better now.
Good. Well, thank you to Rita's parents for pushing her as hard. But here's the thing: they pushed you, they pushed you hard.
Both
But how did they know? How did your parents know that pushing you hard in education was key to you moving up in life? Because here's my impression is that maybe 20 years ago, a lot of Afro-Brazilians didn't see education as an outlet to success. So how did your parents know I need to make sure she gets through these tests and exams?
Well, I think that it has something to do with their own personal history. My father was in a family of six brothers, and my mom also was in a family of five, and they were the only two in each family that went to university. So both of my parents went to university, so they could they actually have a lot of enthusiasm about education, and their main speech was that the only thing that I can give to you and no one can take it away from you is education. So I've been listening to this ever since I was, I don't know, 5 years old. So
Good.
education was something because they went to university and because they studied. So I think that their background helped they building my life and my the way that I would go and deal with education. So it was quite important. They are people that I have a lot of passion about because I know how hard they had to do to go to public universities as well, and I think that they made my life a little bit easier than they had, but it was not that easier. But it was easier than what they had gone through, I'm sure.
So just to give you guys perspective, because I try to make these comparisons between America and Brazil, Rita just told us that her own parents went to public universities in Brazil. So I'm assuming did they graduate maybe 40 years ago?
Yeah, my mom graduated around, it was dictatorship here in Brazil. So over 30 years ago, 35, 36 years ago. Yeah, something like that.
So to be an Afro-Brazilian person and to have graduated, to go to a public university 35 years ago, Rita's mother, Dr. Rita's mother, was a pioneer. She broke barriers, her mother and father. So now we know where it all came from.
She went she was the only woman, the only black, and the only person from Campo Grande going to the university. So it was very hard. I'm pretty sure. And all the time that I was growing up, she was telling me about the experiences she had. So for me, it was kind of important not to disappoint them because of that, because of all that they have been through around their experiences in university.
So I want to remind you guys, we have about 11 people watching. If you have any questions, please post your questions in the comments. We will take questions throughout the interview from people. So just let us know what questions. I do have some questions prepared, but I want to hear from our public. What do you want to talk about with Dr. Rita Borret? So to my next question, and you talked about this a little bit. So here's what I learned about Black doctors in America. So, Black people make up 13% of the United States. The United States has about 320 million people. In terms of doctors, Black doctors make up 5% of all active doctors. So there is a discrepancy. It's not 13%. You just told us that so tell me, in your perspective, and you already talked about this a little bit, are there enough Black doctors in Brazil? Talk about how many Black doctors are there in Brazil, and do we need more, and how are we going to get more?
I think we need a lot more. In the past, starting in 2011, I believe, we had some policies, some public policies that would make easier for Black students to go into universities. So by the time that we have this policy happening in Brazil, it was a little bit easier for people to enter university. But still, we have very few Black people going for medical school. Not only because medical school is hard to go in, but also because it's a school that is hard to stay in, because you have to study in the entire period. So it's hard for you to study and to work by the same time, and it's hard for people to stay 6 years in the university without working. For people that don't have a lot of money, as we would see that a lot of Black people in Brazil do not have a lot of money. For the population, for the Black population, it's hard to stay for 6 years in the university and to be able to pay for everything, to deal with everything. So it's kind of hard, and that's why we have so few Black Brazilians going to university and being able to finish medical school. And why do I think that it's medical school? We do not talk about racism. We do not talk about the disparities between white people and non-white people in Brazil, because there is an atmosphere that it's like racism is not an issue. It doesn't exist. So for Black doctors, we do know that it exists, and we do know that it's important for us to address the situation. And even though we do realize that it's not only our job as Black doctors to address the situation, it is important and it gives a lot of representative for all the Black Brazilians around the country to see and to be seen by Black doctors as well, because this brings other possibilities. Every day on the news, we see Black people being going to prison or being dead by the police, and so many things that are not how we would like our kids, our Black kids, to grow up and desire to be. So I think that once we have more Black diversity as a general in other courses as well, I think this would give a lot more perspective for our kids, for our Black kids. So yeah, it's important, and I think that the way for us to do that is to keep doing collectives like Negrex, and also turning into high school and trying to talk to other Black students in high school to talk to them about how possible it is, and how a lot of us have been managed to go through medical school, and that it's possible, and we can help each other and go through that. I think this of situations and ideas may turn it possible for people to actually do it, to actually go and to have this dream and to pursue this dream of becoming a doctor in Brazil, even if they're Black.
And why do you think it's important to have more Black doctors in Brazil?
I think it's definitely because of for Black people to see themselves in other possibilities, to see themselves in other places, to understand that Black people can go anywhere and can do anything. Right now, I really don't think that in our society that's the message that the society wants us to understand.
Mm-hmm.
For the society, it's expected for Black people to stay in positions that are not very estimated in the society. So by the time that we have more Black doctors, I think that we have more possibilities, especially for our kids, for the Black population that we have as kids, and for them to decide whatever they want to do in their life. If they have, if they see examples of people doing different stuff, I think they can go with it, and they can have this dream.
So let's now talk about Black health, and I'll explain to you why I want to talk about this. I'm from Chicago, and Chicago has this. Even though we've had wonderfully successful Black people from Chicago, we have Barack Obama and Michelle Obama who came from Chicago. Even though we have these amazingly successful Black people from Chicago, the city has always suffered from very strong segregation, racial segregation. But in addition to this racial segregation, mainly what happens is when you go into a neighborhood that's mainly Black, that neighborhood is poorer, and that neighborhood has mainly has public hospitals that you don't have to pay for. And so, and that neighborhood typically the neighborhoods don't have as many options, fresh options for grocery stores, etc. And so what happens is that in my own city, in Chicago, the estimated lifespan of a person in a poor Black neighborhood is about 65 years, whereas the estimated lifespan of a person in a richer whiter neighborhood is like 85 years. That's a difference in 20 years. And what happened was, obviously this was reflected because out of the first 100 people who died from coronavirus in Chicago, 70 of them, that means 70%, were Black, even though Black people only make up 30% of Chicago. So what I'm saying is that there's all these socioeconomic factors that affect Black health in Chicago, in America, period, as well as maybe like, you know, we all know that Black people suffer from diabetes just genetically more than other people. Tell me about Black health in Brazil. Is it similar to how there's these stark differences in Black health that are related to socioeconomic factors? Just tell it. And talk about it in simple terms, because we don't know anything.
Well, I can say that when we talk about Black people health around here in Brazil, we have two big issues that we have to talk about. The first one is the socioeconomic disparities that ever since we went out from slavery, Black people did not get public policies that actually embraced Black people into the Brazilian society. So when we look on people that are living in the worst conditions, people that has the worst jobs, people that have they're unemployed, and people that are living in favelas and communities and poor communities, those are in majority Black people. And it's not like the majority because we have the majority of population that are Black. It's a disproportional majority. So socioeconomic disparities is a fact that happens with the Black population here in Brazil. But the other important factor, and it's extremely important as well, is the racism, is the experience that Black people have of racism. Because when you talk about the segregation that America has gone through, there was a period of time that segregation was something that was legal in the US. In Brazil, we have not had that as something legal, but we still have that today as something that it's undersaid, but it happens. It happens all the time, and it happens including in the public, in the healthcare system. We have institutional racism as a fact. We have a public statement that it's a public statement from 2009. It's 11 years right now, that realize and documents the fact that we have institutional racism in healthcare system. That means that Black people got worst access to health because they're Black, and because healthcare professionals, when they are delivering healthcare, they would do it worse for Black people than they would do for white people. So I think that these two problems are extremely important, especially when we're talking about coronavirus, because it's the main issue of the moment. But even before coronavirus, what we would have in Brazil are like Black women with less access to pre-birth care, prenatal care, and Black women having less access to medication than other populations. People suffering from falciform anemia, which is something that is extremely common among Black people, and not being in emergencies and hospitals. People would decide if they would treat a white person or a Black person, because they would always think that the Black person is might be a person that it's in a problem with the law. They would not care for the Black person. They would choose to take care of the white person before instead. So racism is extremely important in our country here, and it's something that we have been trying to address, especially through medical school, because we do understand that if we do not talk about that, people would keep on reproducing racism through the healthcare that they will give after they graduate. So it's something that's extremely important. Black people health, we cannot talk about Black people health in Brazil without talking about racism and the impact of racism in the process of getting ill for the Black people.
And actually, we have a question related to this. From Cultural Connoisseur, how is Black material and infant mortality in Brazil? That is, if you know about it. Maternal, and I think they're saying Black maternal and infant mortality. Like, and I think you talked about this a little bit. How is the health for Black pregnant women and infant mortality in Brazil?
The Black, we can say that in the last 10 years, Black went a lot down because of primary health care, and because we got more people got access to that works. So we are making it possible for people to access the healthcare system, even though they're living extremely in extremely rural areas, and they have not an easy time going to big cities. So I think this is something that is important. But when we look to the numbers that we produce, when we compare Black maternal and infant death with general and always have going always. So even though population we are getting better healthcare, if we it's like that for almost everything. When we're talking also about domestic violence, women's access to, how do we say that in English, for pap smear to prevent cervical cancer, Black women has less access. Maternal care, Black women has less access as well. So when we're talking about the mortality of maternal and infant, it's bigger for Black people than it would be for the general population. There's always a disparity. Always. The national policy on Black people's health talk about that and brings a lot of numbers for people to understand and to realize how much of institutionalized racism we're talking about when we're talking about public health.
So my next question goes into the current pandemic that we're in the midst of right now, the COVID-19 pandemic. And you said that, I'm thinking, Guy, that you had a successful recovery. Tell us, when you first, okay, so I actually have a couple of questions. When you first heard about coronavirus, let's say maybe around February, well, you heard about it, I'm sure you heard about it earlier, but when it first arrived in Brazil, what were your first worries?
Okay.
Like, what did you think in your head? Oh, as a doctor, what did you worry the most about with coronavirus?
I think that the first thing that came to my mind when we realized that coronavirus was spreading all around the world and it would come to Brazil was that the people they are living in favelas and in poor communities would be extremely vulnerable to the coronavirus, and we would be talking about a public healthcare system that would be already not working as it is supposed to be. So I was extremely worried about the impact that would have the coronavirus if it arrived in the poor communities in Brazil. So it was in the beginning of March, I suppose, that was 13, 14, 15th of March, that it started to officially come here into Brazil. And I remember that the first thoughts and the first worries that we would have was on the how would the coronavirus behave in the poor communities that we have, in the poor communities that people still have tuberculosis and other infectious disease, and we have a lot of trouble trying to control this infectious disease, and how would a pandemic that is spreading so fast and putting so many people in need of hospitalization, how would that behave here in Brazil? So that was our major concern. And today is the 13th of May, but since yesterday, we've come to realize that our concerns was not out of place, because we already have in Brazil the majority of people dying from coronavirus being Black people. So.
And so, can you talk about your experience as a family doctor working at? Are you working at urgent care clinic?
No, I'm working in a primary care facility, and we are delivering care for people that have suspicion of coronavirus, and some of the people have the more intense form of it, like a respiratory syndrome. And I'm working right now at a favela in Rio de Janeiro. So I'm working in one of these poor communities that we were worried about in the beginning of March. So it's been quite hard. It's been hard for me because in the first 2 or 3 weeks that we were going for the quarantine, I would have a lot of patients coming to ask, hey, Rita, do you think that it's true that coronavirus can come to Jacarezinho, which is the place that I work? Because we've heard from the newspaper and we've heard from the media that it's a problem of rich people. So only the rich people are going to die from it. And since that time, we were talking on how untrue that statement is, and how vulnerable to the coronavirus everyone would be. The distribution of healthcare facilities, it's extremely unequal. We were worried about how people would actually have access to the healthcare system. And so this was an extremely worry that we'd had. And around the beginning of this month, when I was, it was in April, by the second half of April, people in Jacarezinho started to die from coronavirus. So people would start to actually be concerned about it, because their neighbor, their family members, something that they knew would be hospitalized or dying from coronavirus. So something that we wanted to actually prevent, something that we wanted to deliver proper information for people to prevent to get coronavirus, could not happen, especially because our institution, our government could not handle it properly. So people would only understand the not the importance, but how coronavirus would be a hazard by the time that it already was in the community and people were starting to die from it. So that's something that was painful to see, because we were trying to we were trying for not that to happen, but it didn't work out. So today, in the last 2 to 3 weeks, we have around 1 or 2 people dying per day in Jacarezinho in suspicion of coronavirus. So it's a lot.
Oh my gosh. Have you noticed a change in the behavior of people since now that people know other people who are dying?
Kind of, because when you're talking about the people living in Jacarezinho, it's hard for them to change their behavior, because our president keeps saying to everybody, if you can, stay at home. But for them, it's not possible to stay at home because they are finding any other ways of getting money to pay for the bills and to buy food and all those kind of stuff. So people are still going to work because they need to have some kind of money, and these people are extremely vulnerable, because by the time that they go back home, they're living in a house that is extremely tiny, and there's 5, 6, 7 people living together. So the social isolation is not something that it's actually possible or true to people living in favelas. And we would suppose that the government realize that and understand that, so they would have some strategies for the protection of these people, and it didn't happen. The truth is that it never happened, and we are seeing now people dying and the coronavirus spreading very fast in the favelas. So it's kind of, that's the situation we have right now. And every time that I say people living in favelas, it's important for you to understand that people living in favela are in majority Black people.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about Black poor people living in a hard situation, and that do not have access to a public healthcare system or any healthcare system, if I might say so.
And let's say, and I don't know if you can answer this, but what do you wish the Brazilian government had done? I mean, we all know that the Brazilian government would not have done. I mean, I'm going to assume that the Brazilian government just would not have done anything to direct their energies to communities and favelas, because we know who the president is. But in your mind, what do you think that the Brazilian government should have done, knowing that if coronavirus arrives in favelas and communities, poor communities, that it's going to spread much faster? Like, what do you think the government should have done? Or the health minister?
I think that there are two. I think there are two things that should have been done. The first one, I think that our government took a long time to establish some financial policies to organize a way for people to have enough money to live throughout the quarantine. So if the government would be faster in thinking about these policies, or not even delivering money, but delivering food, maybe we would be able to handle this in a better way, in a proper way. And I think that the other thing that for me it's quite important, I don't know if you do know that, but in Brazil, we are not testing everybody that has suspicion of coronavirus. So what we are doing is that for everyone that we think that might have coronavirus, that has the symptoms, we are telling these people to stay home, but we are not testing them. So I'm pretty sure that in late March, we already had a lot of people in Jacarezinho, for example, in other communities, with a positive exam for coronavirus. So if we would go and test these people, and if we could isolate the people that are with a positive exam, then the spread in the community would be smaller than we're having right now. Because it's hard for people to, okay, so I might have coronavirus, I might not have coronavirus, but I'm going to stay at home for 14 days, not going to work, not making money, being a burden for my family. Okay, I'm going to do that, but I'm not sure if I'm going to do that for the 14 days. We had a lot of these situations, people asking us, can you please let me go back to work before the 14 days? Because otherwise I'm not going to have money to keep up with the family expenses and this kind of stuff. So if we have a better testing strategy, and we could actually isolate people that had a positive test in March, maybe right now in May, we would not be having this kind of situation. Something that comes to my mind, I don't know if you were able to read from it, but the first person that died in Brazil in Rio from coronavirus was a woman that works in the house of a rich family.
Mhm.
So the rich family went to Italy and they came back. They were supposed to stay home for the 14 days in quarantine, but they did not dismiss the, I think we would call a housekeeper.
Mhm.
They did not keep her from going to the house. So she went to the house, she worked there, she got the coronavirus from the family, and she went back to her house and she died in her house. And she also put her family into contact with the coronavirus, not only her family, but her community, because this rich family did not understand that if they were supposed to do the quarantine, they would have to put the housekeeper that they are having in the house out from work for these 14 days. This is something that did not happen. So that's pretty much the story of the virus spread here in Brazil. People that came from Europe brought the virus, and people that were working because they did not have any other option got in touch with the virus and brought to their communities, and the virus spread enormously in the communities. So that's pretty much what happened and what we're living right now.
And I want to throw in a question from Brian Jones, slightly off topic, but Brian Jones asks, is there anything Americans can do to help more Afro-Brazilians attend universities in Brazil? I was like, oh, okay. What do you think? What can we do?
We have here in Brazil something that we call community. We call pre-vestibular. Vestibular is a test that people do to enter university. So we have a lot of community courses that prepare students to go to university, because we do know that the public school, the the public education system is quite unequal to the private one. So people are in extremely disadvantage. So the majority of people going to the public education are Black people, and they are in disadvantage to enter the university because they go through the same test that people who goes to a private one. So what we do, and Negrex is also trying to do that, is helping the organization of these community courses that would prepare people to go into university. So I think this is a way to help, to maybe financial support, or to help with English lessons, or to help with other teaching material for people who are trying to prepare themselves to go to a public university. So for those people going in Jacarezinho, we have community courses. In Rocinha, in a lot of favelas in Rio and in Brazil, we have this public community courses that would prepare people to go to university. So something that I think it could be interesting to help. And also I think that if more Black people would come to high schools, would come to the school to talk to the students on their experience, on how they succeeded, and on how they managed to go and to be successful. I think this is also extremely important, and people do not get in touch with that a lot. So it's something also that Negrex have been doing in the last 2 or 3 years. We have been organizing days that we go to public schools to talk to students about what they're planning for the future, and what are their dreams, and how can they pursue the idea of going to a university, something like that. So it's been quite important to exchange these thoughts and these ideas with students. So it's something that I think that maybe if people want to help from US, those are some ideas that I suggest.
Thank you. So I want to remind people we're winding down in our talk, but if you have any questions, please post your questions in the comments I only have about 2 more questions, so get your questions in soon so we can ask them. So my next question, which I'm actually the most excited about, you are getting a doctorate in public health at FioCruz, and your doctorate is focusing on the intersection of race, gender, and sexual identity as it relates to Black lesbians, correct? Tell me about this, because I don't think I've ever read anything related to this, or so I don't even have an idea on what you're getting a doctorate in. So tell me.
Okay, let me see what I can try to explain. So in the past years, since I've been working as a family doctor, I've experienced the interaction and assistance to a lot of people, especially Black people, and a lot of people, they are sexual minorities, such as lesbian, gay, bisexual people. And for the majority of the sexual minorities, going to a healthcare facility is a situation that is very hard, because they are expecting not to be embraced. They're expecting to be to suffer discrimination and prejudice. And something that calls my attention is that through medical education, we have nothing. We have no education about how to address to lesbians, to gay people, to transgender population. So we have nothing about that. So we don't learn on how to address, how to inform, how to take proper care of this population. And because we do not know how to do that, by the time that people go to a healthcare facility and come out and say, "Oh, I'm a lesbian, I need help," what happens in usually is that the professional, the healthcare professional, don't know what to say, don't know what to do. And they would, we have the statistics that what happens is that the consultation tends to get shorter, and the information that the healthcare provider would give to these women is not correct. So my idea in the doctorship is to understand and to realize how the intersection of being Black women and a lesbian impact in the process of getting ill in Brazil, and how is that? How these women, which I'm including, how these people understand the healthcare system, and how do they realize this healthcare system in being a place where they can find healthcare, or a place where they can fight discrimination and more oppression. So I think this the idea is to try to study more about that, to try to offer to family doctors the perspective of offering proper care for these women, for these lesbian Black women. They are going through an intersection of a lot of oppressions in Brazil. So I think it's quite important. And the idea of doing the doctorate was because I was actually trying to find more information about the intersection of race, gender, and sexual identity. But in Brazil, we have very few information about that. We almost don't have anything about it. So I'm pretty sure that we don't have a lot of information about that, because we're not actually paying attention to this population. So these people are being silenced, and these people are not being able to get the proper care that they should be having. So that's why I'm studying, and that's why that's what I will try to organize and to publish about. So
does this care even exist at all in Brazil? Because I feel like maybe in America, I know of some particular individual healthcare providers, particularly in large cities, maybe in New York and in Chicago, that do provide that type of intersectional healthcare. Does that exist in Brazil already?
In the public healthcare system, no. But what I'm pursuing is not that we have some special places that would deliver this kind of care, but what I want is for all the primary health care facilities to be able to offer this kind of care, because the primary healthcare system is the major entrance for the healthcare system. So if a lesbian black woman go to a primary healthcare system and she understand that that place is not a place where she can be actually cared for, if she understands this place as a place where she's going to be discriminated or oppressed, then she's probably not going to access the healthcare system at all. So I think that if we work on trying to make the primary healthcare system a place that can address to these lesbian, black lesbians, then we're actually going to offer a proper care for these women, because they're not only going to have situations and problems with their sexuality or with their race. They're going to have any problems, and any problems, the place to go if you have any problem is the primary healthcare system. So we want people to be understood as a whole, and to be understood as a whole is to also understand that race is a situation, and sexual identity is a situation, and gender is also a situation that can impact extremely in the process of getting you. So that's the idea of the doctorate. I don't know if I was clear, but
no, that's clear.
That's
How
the
long
meaning.
do you have? How much longer do you have to go to finish your doctorate?
I just started it 2 weeks before the quarantine starts, so I have 4 years to go.
Okay. And we have another question from cultural connoisseur. She asks, how can holistic healthcare providers assist your work?
That's a great question, actually, because in primary healthcare, we are always trying to connect and to exchange experience and to think of other ways of delivering care. They're not only in, I'd say, biomedicine. So we are trying to pursue different and also other important ways of understanding the process of getting you. So in Brazil, we have a lot of people there that go for a religion that is shared among African people. We would call that Ubanda or Candomblé. And a lot of black doctors are trying to dialogue with these centers to think and to offer a care that makes sense for people that go through or have this kind of religion. So, and we have so many, I don't know how to say that, but people have their beliefs and have their own ways of understanding and expressing what they're feeling and what they are, how they understand their illness. And in primary healthcare, what we try to do is to understand that and to go with the person that is feeling you and to understand how they, what that means for them. So the holistic healthcare helps a lot on trying to actually being cultural competent, of actually trying to understand how people are dealing with. And sometimes what we do realize that what they do need is not a doctor that has the biomedicine specialty, but sometimes what they actually do need is so many other possibilities, and we're trying to offer this bunch of possibilities. So the holistic healthcare is something that for us is very important, and we've been trying to work together for the last, at least for the last 5-6 years.
So everybody who's on, you have your last opportunity to ask a question, because I'm going on my last question. And before I go on my last question, I do want to let you guys know that, hold on, where are we? Oh my gosh, I'm missing. I want to let you guys know that we also have another chat tomorrow. Oops, let me take that off. We also have another chat tomorrow at the same time with Paulo Rogério. Paulo Rogério is a social entrepreneur from Salvador de Bahia. So be here at the same time tomorrow. We're going to have another wonderful chat with another amazing Afro-Brazilian person through online. So please check that out tomorrow. But I guess I'm going to go on to my last question because I don't have any more questions from the public. So my last question, and we know Hida has to go because I can hear her phone already. My last question is, and maybe I tried to address everything I felt we should know right in my questions, but is there anything that you want people to know about Black doctors and Black health in Brazil? Anything that we have not addressed? What do you want people to know about Black doctors and Black health in Brazil?
Something that I think it's important for people to know is that a lot of things that we are trying to address here in Brazil, and a lot of things that we're trying to bring to medical school and to talk about on racism and the impact of racism, we are actually learning from Americans, from the US, from family doctors in the US. So implicit bias and the importance of pointing out the racism as a fact is some stuff that we are actually learning from the US, and we're bringing to Brazil, to the discussion, because for a lot of time, every time that we talk about health and considering health as well-being, we are not talking about race. So it has been silenced for a long time. And in the medical field, what we do understand is that we are still in Brazil trying to explain to people that there is no such thing as a biological evidence of race. That race is a social construction. So we are still in this moment here in Brazil, and to explain that, and to explain racism, and to explain how racism impacts the life of African Brazilians is something that we are just starting to do. It's something that we have been doing for the last 10, 11 years because of the policy. There were people trying to do that before this time, but if it's hard now, it was even harder before. So I think that this is important for people to know, because when we say that 56% of the Brazilian population understand themselves as Black or brown, you're talking tomorrow with some guy from Salvador, and Salvador is the blackest city outside of Africa. But we still having a lot of problem for people in Brazil to understand that racism exists. That racism is a situation that has to be addressed. So even though we have been going a lot of steps forward, we are still having to discuss either if racism exists, doesn't exist, if race is something biological or not biological. So we're going forward, but we're still having to discuss and to bring the discussion on a very, very, very superficial basis, because for the majority of Brazilians, this discussion is still in this superficial level. So it's important for us, for people to know that, to understand that, and to address the situation. Something that it's extremely important for us when we're talking about Black people's health is the mental health, is the mental distress of growing up in a society that understands Black people as inferior, as negative, as people that are not supposed to succeed in life. So the health ministry last year released some material on how for a young Black Brazilian, the chances of committing suicide is 45% higher than for a white young person. So those questions on mental health are extremely important to us, and to understand the racism that people brings within themselves is that they put in that they internalize is something very important, and it's something that people are not paying attention here in Brazil yet. But we are trying to make this discussion, to bring this discussion for people to be aware of this situation.
And our last question actually is from cultural connoisseur. She wants to know, what is the best way to get in contact with you? I guess
you can send. You have my contact.
Okay.
Oh, please. I didn't understand. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. What is the best way to get in contact with you?
You can get in contact with me through my Instagram. I think you have posted my Instagram, and also you have my contact. So I'm pretty easy to talk to if you want to, or if people.
Oops, you froze just a little bit.
Agree.
Okay, I got you. I think you're back.
Don't know if you're able to listen to me.
Now I got you. Okay. She left. No, I have one more question. Oh, we lost her right at the end. Maybe she'll come right back. We'll see. I'll give it a minute to see if she'll come right back. Oh my gosh, I learned so much in that conversation. Dr. Rita Borret, she broke it down. She broke down Black health in Brazil and coronavirus. So I want to thank her. She's not online anymore. I want to thank her for being here. Oh, she's back. Let me get her back. Hey, we lost you for a second. Actually, okay, I just have one more question. This is
something went wrong here.
This is absolutely my last question. Tell me how you felt to see Thelma, the Black doctor on Big Brother Brazil win. I mean, for you guys, I know you guys are, a lot of our audience is from America. So the recent winner of Big Brother Brazil was a Black woman doctor named Thelma. She beat everybody. She was the last person standing in Big Brother. So I just want to know, Rita, Dr. Rita, how did you feel just seeing another Black woman as a doctor on television every single day in Brazil?
It was quite special. Actually, it was especially because it was during the quarantine here in Brazil. So a lot of people were seeing the reality show. So a lot of people, we would talk about that with all groups of friends. So everybody was actually going through the reality show, the Big Brother reality show. And for, I don't know, for the last 2 months, because I did not think that our society would be able to make that happen. And I was so happy to see her, because she was there as a Black doctor, as a Black woman, and she was not apologizing for being who she was. She was not there trying to be the funny lady or the one that would accept everything. She was there and she was being herself, and all the time that people would have her heartwarming, actually, because we were going through so many hard stuff here, and to have a moment where we could see that a Black woman succeeded and in national TV was very important. It was very important for me, and I think that for all the Black women doctors that I know, having her as the champion of a reality show, something that seems very superficial and naive, was actually very important, and it helped a lot for us to continue and to get strength to go and to keep fighting this pandemic. So it was important. I think she was very important for us. Her victory made a statement for, I don't know, but for us to keep dreaming with the idea that we will have a society where having a Black woman as a doctor is possible. And it's actually a possibility that we can dream of, and a possibility that we can rely on. So it was good. It was very good to see her winning. It was very important to me and to a lot of people that I know. There's also Black women as doctors.
Cool. Well, that is the end. Oh my gosh, we went an hour and 15 minutes. Thank you so much. I'm going to get you the recording. You're going to be able to share it with everybody. And just once again, I'm so happy that you recovered from coronavirus, and because we need you to help our people. I just help obviously you're going to help everybody, but we need you. We need you on the front lines. So thank you so much.
So much for your patience and for the cheers for getting better. And thanks for the chat. It was good to listen from other people, from other people dealing with the coronavirus. So it's good to know that you're okay as well. It's good to know that you're with your family in this moment, in this very difficult moment. And we're here. We're going to keep fighting against it, and we're going to keep posting everything that we do realize that the government should be doing better to protect the Black people from Brazil.
Okay. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.